Hello DevOps people, welcome to Full Stack Live, my live coding stream, where I do some kinds of Ruby development. Today I'm going to resume work on a project that I've started about 2 weeks ago, which is a chef cookbook for installing mysqlx. There are chef books that automate MySQL installation and configuration. Most prominently, there is a Unity cookbook named MySQL, but I think cookbook has become far too complex, even though practical use cases don't even require complexity. And that's why I decided to actually go ahead and fork an earlier version of the book and continue in my own way, where the original maintainers went and made a few design decisions that I find rather questionable. I've already forked the cookbook, and let me see where my repository is. And we'll take a look at where we stand. Before I do so, as always, let's make this interactive. Let's chat. Let's discuss things. If there's anything you'd like to ask, if there is any recommendation you have, please feel free to simply get in touch via chat. All right, so let's get cracking. Or, you know what? I'll just lean back for a minute and get my mind into things. It's 8 p.m. here in Ireland, and I've been alone in the office because there's a holiday in parts of Germany, So my colleague Marcus had taken the day off. Fortunately, also parts of our customer base took the day off, so it was pretty quiet, and I could focus on the things I wanted to do. Except we had a small database outage, or performance degradation would be the better, which pulled me out of my focus, but it was easy to resolve. Yeah, these solo days are a mixed bag overall. On one hand, you have to do whatever you want, you don't have any calls to do, your schedule is pretty flexible. On the other, you really have to brass in gear and actually do something and not watch conference videos or other stuff because no one's watching. But overall, I'm pretty happy with my working life. It's really convenient. The freedom I have is pretty awesome. I get to take walks whenever I want to. Actually, in the early afternoon, I'm pretty tired because I got a bit less sleep this week than I would like to. I simply took a nap of 20 minutes and felt better afterwards, and just being able to walk to my bed and take a nap and then resume working with a much clearer head is certainly something that I appreciate. And now we've put our kids to bed, and it's time to do a bit more work. If the decision to do an evening live stream is really one. On one hand, it's nice and quiet, and I can get a bit of stuff done. On the other hand, the brain might already be on low charge, and we'll see how things work out. Alright then. Let's see. So here's the issue. MySQL Cookbook is updated. We are lagging behind the 4.x version of the Community Cookbook, and the Community Cookbook is now at 8 dot something, and so what I actually did in this browser 404 mysqlx cookbook is I took the latest version 4.x, which still uses the original chef style of doing things with standard keys that execute scripts, and created a new cookbook which I've named mysqlx, and now it's the next step to make it work with current operating systems and chef versions, because 4.x was built in 2016-ish around, so it's not up to date in terms of operating system support and chef version support. But yeah, that's my work going to be. Alright then, now let's switch to 404 mysqlx cook and do a pull. Okay, we are already up to date. Okay, we should merge the current master branch so we don't have these issues here. Okay, it worked. So now we have a clean directory and we can fire up VS Code. I shouldn't start from here, but from the actual mysqlx cookbook. All right, and now let's see. We have a few nice recipes here, a client recipe that installs the MySQL client, and a server recipe that installs the server, which is so that's the important part. By the way, is it pronounced MySQL or is it pronounced MySQL? Not that that's relevant for coding work, but I'm a stickler for names, name things, and so let's find out. Not procrastinating. So let's see. MySQL is officially announced. MySQL. Okay. Doesn't roll off the tongue as easily, but I'll make an effort of pronouncing it correctly. So it's mysqlx. Okay, done. And let's go back to the code. We also have a kitchen YAML here that I've already updated to with Chef 13. I guess we should still try and Ubuntu 14. Or shouldn't we? Well, I guess it doesn't make much sense to support it. Well, people might still need to run it on Ubuntu 14, so... And I don't think it'll be much additional work. Famous with last words. Okay, so we have a client suite that executes MySQL test. So there's a testing cookbook built into the repository, and it probably works as an application cookbook, then uses the mysqlx class recipe here. And let's find out if that's actually the case. Here is the MySQL test cookbook, and we have to rename it, I think, because it's just in development, so MySQL test should be okay. But we'll have to update the metadata RB, which is already has already happened. Let's go ahead and fix these minor style issues right away. We always use double quotes, string delimiters, because it's simply more convenient and doesn't make much of a difference. Okay, so that's all right. Let's take a look at the client recipe itself. It already does include recipe mysqlx, and we'll again fix the quotes. That's okay. So I'd say we with the client test suite and see what happens if we... So go ahead and create a new Gmux window over here, and let's see, we should have a number of here for both operating system versions, so the client for 14.04 and the client for 16.04. Let's start with the 14.04 and run test kitchen converge for that instance. And I guess it shouldn't do much more than simply, yeah, it calls my mysqlx client and the client recipe. Installs the client packages, else is only Windows, so it shouldn't be relevant here. So I don't expect too many issues, client part of things. And I go ahead and I guess in this case it's easier to do a search case. And we'll work with the regex, so we'll try and find single quotes, then something that's not a single quote, and then finally the finishing single quote. We'll replace that with the same thing, double quotes. And let's click replace all. That's almost okay, but here we have a string with interpolations, and in this case we want the interpolations in single quotes. And there actually are issues, and let's find out what they are. Here we can use exist. Here's another case of quoted stuff. Nested in this case. And that line is too long, and we'll break these lines down later. First, take a look at what's going wrong here. Okay, so it tried to run apt-get install on the MySQL client, still working on it, and this fails. This is often the case because the base image for the test instance isn't up to date, and before we run before we run apt-get all specifically, we need to run apt-get update. And that's easy to do by adding the apt cookbook to the mix, testing only. So it won't be a dependency cookbook in production, but we'll be apt default recipe before we do anything else, because this default recipe will take care of updating the package index. The only thing we need to do for this is to add the apt cookbook to the works file here, which is already the case. I'm just pretty sure that we'll need version 5 upwards because of the Chef 13 support. Don't know about Yum. We'll have to Red Hat tests later, or the operating support for non-Ubuntu. I'm only used to using Ubuntu on servers. I've been running Ubuntu since 1.6, I think. And of course, since we want to update to this cookbook as open source, we'll have to extend the operating support beyond Ubuntu. Previously, this cookbook did support many other Linux versions, and while I'll start with Ubuntu support, we'll have to retrofit the remaining operating systems as well, so people can from an old version of the MySQL cookbook to the MySQL. This time I was right. mysqlx cookbook without many issues. Alright, so let's works update apt so that we switch from apt 2 to apt 5. So 5.1.0, and let's try another test kitchen Verge. Well, let me switch on my Office TV that I'm using as a matrix board. Okay, so this is looking much better. We got the MySQL client installed, the library as well, so that's exactly what I to do. And let's see if there are any integration tests that we can. I'd expect there to be some. Oh, there are bats checks, so actual shell-based integration tests. I'm going to replace that by inspect tests, because inspect will allow us a few more things, and will especially allow us to remain in Ruby land. But still, BAT's test suite was successful. It only checks if the MySQL command be run. And what I'll go ahead and direct place that with inspect because it's so simple. So I will file here in client, and we'll call it after the recipe. So it's going to be client.rb, and we can simply say describe command mysql version do it should be successful, because that's this check does too. And we can remove the bats direct here. Test kitchen will automatically imply that this is a spec test. However, we can make this explicit by using the verifier configuration in our test kitchen. Good evening, Slayer Darth. How are you? Microphone crackling a bit. Shouldn't happen. Let me try something. Oh. maybe it's a bandwidth thing here. I've just shut down something, and we'll see if that helps. Okay, so voice is deep toned. Well, might be that. Well, no, it'd be lying if I said that I was talking a lot today, because I was completely alone in my virtual office. Might be the late time of day. Whatever. I haven't installed an equalizer, that's for sure. Even though I have a complete audio suite at my disposal, as yeah, because I'm also doing a bit of hobby recording and synth popping. But I digress. Let's see if the verification with the inspect tests does work well. Possessed, I can neither affirm nor deny that. Okay, it's not quite as easy as I claimed, because the command seems to not have the successful predicate. I'll find out. Inspect resource. Come on. Here we go. Since my since my ball broke down recently, I got myself a new mouse. I'm using a how does it work? A Logitech vertical mouse now. Camera is mirroring, and it's so much more convenient. I am prone to RSI issues, and being able to keep my hand in this handshake position, hold your mouse like this, instead of having to tilt your hand into the horizontal, it's so easier and less, it does put so much less pressure on my wrist. It's really amazing. Feels weird at first, but I already had been using a vertical mouse before from a different end, and that mouse broke after only weeks or something. No, if I had, well, RS is a well-known acronym, and if you start feeling wrists and your arms and up to your neck, you're quickly to find out what RSI means. I've been having issues for quite a while. I'm trying to fight them by having an ergonomic keyboard and now also an ergonomic mouse. It really does make a difference. Okay, so what can we here? We should be able to simply have an exit status. Okay. Okay, that's the exit status then. Its exit status should equal 0. I can copy this. Go into the client spec file and replace this here and say, okay, its status should be 0. Yes, I do have issues with Radio Poor International in my wrist. You're such a clever guy, Slaredath. And here we go. Exit status should equal 0, and it does. Okay, let's be brave and run verify directly on the 16-OR instance, which first to converge. If I had been researching medical terms, I could tell what happens when you twist your arm in order to lay your hand flat on a mouse, because it's these bones that get bent to each other, and that's not a very good, turns out. Okay, so quickly pause this here because I just had that I'm using an older image for Ubuntu 16, and I should vagrant box update. Okay, you can continue here, and I'll go ahead and update this. However, I need to find out what it's called. It's Bento Ubuntu 16.04, and I think, do I just add this as an argument? I need -- box. Okay. Here we go. Thanks for the information about osteoporosis, but how does that relate to anything? Or do we simply play a game of physician so we get from radio to... Oh, okay, sharing medical info. All right, let's do that. So I'll have to think of something now. Did I learn of some medical facts recently? Probably not. Okay, we updated our box image, and it'll get used next time when we spin up a test. But since we're talking about medical issues, I wonder if there are already therapy groups for middle keyboard users, because I'm getting more concerned about my state of mind in that regard. I'm already looking at the mechanical keyboards Reddit, and thinking about caps and exotic keyboard switches and stuff like that, and it can only get worse from there. Yeah, R is always the entry-level drug, and it gets you to consider ergonomic keyboard, and then you see that this keyboard is available in different key switches, so you start researching, okay, what's the difference in a Cherry MX Blue and Kailua box burnt orange, and yeah, and it's just going downhill from there. A huge issue for users in general is the number of times their eyes blink. So is it a higher number of times than with the average, or is it a lower one? Because I can imagine that staring at a screen all day leads to blinking, which in turn might cause your eyes to dry up more quick. As someone who wears contact lenses, I'm pretty aware of that. Okay, so 16 does work as well. Success. Which only means that we are now getting to the more interesting and more challenging stuff, like the server side. much lower, so. Well, okay. I guess we could do the Ruby recipe as well, because that only installs the Ruby gem for mysqlx, and it does a bit of preparation up front, and installs the MySQL client as well, because the gem needs to be compiled with the library, so it has to install a few other packages. Or does the library seems to be sufficient? Okay, so we could simply do our search and replace again here to shut up Rubocop down here. Oh, brilliant, did the trick. However, no, that's okay. And that was sneezing. I seem to have already done a search and replace for the cookbook name all over the place. Nice thing, Mr. Gee whiz. Good. Oh, good. Let's go ahead and try the instances. First, the Ubuntu 14 ones. And I guess I should shut down the client instances, because all VMs are going to eat up a bit of RAM. I do have plenty of RAM. We don't want to be wasteful. Start off, what have you been up to recently? What computer projects have you been on? Let's see, there's an update we should do. Oh no, it's up to... Is it up to date? Yes it is. Sorry for interrupting. Well, I do think that I do think that darker colors are easier on the eyes. So I'm an ops guy, and I have to sometimes get up at night because my page was beeping, and I'll have to quickly log terminals and see what caused the alarm. And now coming out of the dark bedroom into your home office and switching on, and you're greeted by a huge terminal screen that is black text on white background. I guess you'll probably need 2 minutes to get used to the blinding, and so yeah, I am using darker colors here as well, because it's just less taxing to the eyes. So you've been doing Java Spring Boot technical test. What exactly is that? I know Java from back in the day. I do know that a Spring framework that introduced the dependency injection method of doing things. But I'm not sure if that's related to what you call Spring Boot. And what kind of technical test did you do? Oh, you tested yourself? And you're studying A-level maths. A-level maths. Oh, brilliant. Good for you. Eventually, I would love to do some more studying. It's easy for me to see, because nothing will depend on that, but I so much love learning and simply to topic and really study something and get tested. So really need to do something, and you can't just let it pass you by. I've always dreamt of something like that, especially if it's completely different from my field of expertise. So let's say I'd do something like where my wife is more versed in than I, anthropology or something like that. Great University in Ireland? Yeah, I do think so. The universities I know of, both the one in Dublin as well as those in Limerick or Cork, seem to be quite decent. So we have another apt update here, update issue here, and I'll go ahead and apply the same technique to these here as well. Okay, let's try and converge again. Queen's University belt, okay. Trinity Dublin is the leading university in Dublin, I guess. But there's also University College Dublin, UCD, and that's pretty around as well. Yeah, I was aware that Belfast is actually non-island. Non-iron. Wait, what? We still have this issue, even though I did include this. In which case, let's do a test kitchen converge here. And I really don't have to forgive for anything. I'm not Irish, so I should not be it in any way, and I am not. What is happening? I guess I'll have to take a closer look at the log here. So in here is another shell, isn't there? Or is this the whole run? This looks like it's repeating. Okay, here we start. And launches right into mysqlx client instead of using the apt cookbook, which is strange, but might be caused by... Oh, it's just a simple include right here. And we should also include recipe build essential, which needs to be part of our dependencies. Oh, that's the wrong file. Where's the main metadata? We build essential in here. And there's a lot of single quotes that we'll have to replace. Regular expressions to the rescue. Here we go. These all need to be converted into the new, not hash rocket mission, but I'll do that later. Question is, why does it go? Run list is actually apt, and then mysqlx Ruby, and still we go right to mysqlx client here. Why would you do that? I'm either missing a small thing here or test kit simply got confused, and that's why I test destroy this instance, and then I'll convert it fresh. You do have it? Okay. Your 1800s Irish ancestor died. Well, yeah, that's to be expected in 2019, isn't it? He was quite well off accounts, but the horse-drawn carriage he and his friend took one day was also used as ambulance, so he and his friend contracted smallpox from their fellow passenger and died. Really? No joke? That's tragic. Sorry to hear that. So, that's a bummer. So, because their carriage, so I guess it was their decision to be generous enough to let their carriage be used as an ambulance. Oh, or they took it like you take a taxi, and well, that would simply speak for modern standards of hygiene, huh? Smallpox is rampant in some areas, isn't it? I think I remember reading about that, just really, that there was an outbreak of smallpox somewhere in the world. And don't get me started on that whole vaccination discussion. So, building a new test instance here. Interesting. Even though as is first in the run list, it goes right into running the client CP. Let's take that again. Where's the Ruby cookbook? I'll close the test cookbook because that's confusing me. So we set build a second compile time to true. That's fine with me. And it should first include recipe build essential default and then go into mysqlx client. However, it does not. There are hay fever vaccines. Oh yes, yeah. There are vaccinations against hay fever. I do have hay fever myself. But I do also have a strange skin condition that requires me to take allergy pills anyway, so that solves my hay fever problem as well. Okay. That's a complete mystery here. Chef, how are you doing? So, here's the trace, that might help. There's mysqlx recipes Ruby 44. That's down here. Ah, look at that. That's how they make this happen. See? Reading logs actually helps. Okay, I have to explain this a bit probably. A run consists of multiple phases. So these chef recipes get executed as normal Ruby code, and all these chef-specific commands here are actually methods of chef classes, basically. And so this gets executed. There are chef resources that get collected during this run. So for example, let's take a look at this. This is a nice and easy example. Here we have a loop that goes through the packages array. So it's actually a hash value, a nested hash value, mysql, then inside their client and inside their packages, which obviously returns an array as a value. We go through this array, we iterate over this array and call the package resource, which gets simply stored by chef as a kind of to-do list. This creates a to-do list of package resources, and when all these recipes that have been executed, chef has a very long list of things to do: install packages, create configuration files, restart services that are related to these configurations, and so on and so on. So there's first an execution phase, and then there's the, which is also called resource collection phase, and then there's the actual converge phase where changes are made to the system. The Ruby here breaks by doing this here. Instead of using the package resource directly as the client recipe did, you can see it simply says package name. There isn't even a do some details block after this. This is the simple version of the package resource that has installed its default action. So all these packages simply installed, but since the package resource is used here, all this goes into the to-do list first, and it gets executed in the second phase of the chef run. The Ruby recipe, however, uses a chef internal method called resources, which creates a package resource on the fly and directly executes the run action on this resource. And this happens while this Ruby code is executed. Things don't wait for the whole Ruby execution phase to be finished and then simply process the to-do list. Instead of that, it creates a lot of, you could call it an anonymous resource or a dynamic resource or something like that. So these resources get not created and added to a to-do list, but this recipe immediately calls the install action on these resources, and that's this happens before actual working through the to-do list phase starts, which would start with running the apt recipe. We don't get this far, as this happens first. And that's because this gem resource will be early in the to-do list, and before that we already need to have the base packages installed. And the chef gem resource also gets executed during the first phase, because we might be installing this gem because we need it in a cookbook. So this all has to happen very early in the whole converge run. And this is a bit more complicated to fix. Because how do we get an apt-get date in before even this happens? Because this happens so early. And mind you, I don't want to add code to the CP because we only need this in test and only to mitigate the fact that our instance images might be outdated. I mean, fixing the actual issue, the root cause would be one way to that, simply to get an image that is out. Vagrant would allow me to some kind of provisioning script before the whole chef stuff starts. It's not trivial. Well, nowadays all the cool automations seem to be written in Go, I think, and not sure if Vagrant even is written in Ruby. Might be because it's one of the oldest HashiCorp products. But I'm pretty sure other tools out of HashiCorp are built with Go. I think Console or Vol or Nomad. But I do love Ruby because it's a very nice language. I really like the syntax and how the people building Ruby and Ruby 2 think. And it's versatile, and with its huge gem library, it can do all kinds of stuff. You fire a Golang dev, do you tell them to go? Not sure. Yeah, brackets are obviously used for things like hash and hash keys and array indexes and things like that, as is quite common, but don't have curly braces, for example, as the default for block delimiters. The only exception is that if you have a block that is a one-liner, you can replace do and end by curly braces. Okay, that's a nice challenge here for my 9 o'clock pain. I agree, it's easy to have a missing bracket. On the other hand, it's also quite easy to find that, for example, by re-indenting it, and then you notice, okay, something's not right, and I do that from time to time, that I simply let my get re-indented by my editor, and then I can see if everything doesn't line up. How do we get apt in here at early in the process? Not sure. I'd like to investigate. There is a way on the lower vagrant level. Vagrant run script and provision shell scripts provisioning. The vagrant shell provision allows you to upload an extra script within the guest machine. This idea is new to vagrant who want to get up and running quickly and provides a strong alternative for users who are novel with a full configuration management system such as Chef or Puppet. So be able to do exactly this. However, I need a vagrant file. That's what I don't like here. Crap. Ruby devs get really annoyed if you don't use the right keywords, though. Like less. Well, oh, you mean if someone writes if not expression instead of using unless action? Yeah, I can see there are pedants out there that would you using unless. That's funny. You can also quickly make a mess of your condition if you are using unless wrong, especially if you are using less with a negated condition. That gets head-wracking quite quickly. Can I run provisioning stuff from test kitchen? Test kitchen, vagrant script. Okay, here's the notation for the vagrant driver. We have configuration. We have a box. Customize settings, add disks, pre-create command. That sounds like interesting. Pre-create command. Under the driver. Let's see, that sounds like a solution that we could use more fun. Pre-create command apt-get it. Because that would let us remove all this apt clutter here. Let's hope this works. I got it. Tear down this instance. Alright, from the start. And yes, Ruby does allow for pretty creative things, like describing with switch cases. However, I'm also a very clean code centric guy, and I certainly don't think everything that can be done should be done. Because even though the machine does understand what you mean, 6 months in the future you might not. So no such file or directory. apt-get. I guess that's simply because it's in full path. Let's hope that's the case. So it's user bin. Right. And the cat doesn't like switch true then. No, I don't think I am. Don't think I like that, because I don't think the story it tells is what's actually happening here. But maybe you can provide me with a more extensive example here. Sure, if I understand what you mean with switched. So user bin doesn't work either. Okay. So let's read a bit more here. Oh wait, that gets executed on the host machine, right? Okay, this command will be executed from the directory containing the kitchen YAML file, so it's running on my machine here instead of the VM. That's not what I'm looking for. Basic switch true, case variable const string run, case variable contains string 2. You don't need the switch true though. It's simply in Ruby it starts with case, and then you have multiple when branches, and these can actually have different conditions. I think that's the same as we had back in the Perl days. And yes, it's an area, I'd say. Because these things be related, otherwise they should be separate. Or in other words, you should really have a good reason to mash all this into a single block. If you don't have that everything gets mashed in there, other than, well, it saves me a few lines of code or something like that, then it's not, I don't think it's a good idea. Cache directory, control.erb. So no real solution here. Let's research the actual root cause. So test kitchen vagrant apt-get update. So can have config VM provision shell and then command or file. What advantages does getting upgrading my vagrant box update have? Oh, we're doing a good upgrade. That's something completely different. I feel like we're approaching building your own vagrant box territory. I'm going to copy this. So there are frequent releases. And less frequent releases. So how about the Ubuntu 16? This one has been released long ago. However, there is a 2019-06 2 days ago. Why wouldn't this box, well, yeah, we're talking about the 1404 box. Ubuntu 14.04. That was released 6 months ago. Actually, it looks like it was released, yeah, end of 2018. This is not making me. Do I really have to build my own box to be sure that I'm up to date? I'd have to the whole tooling workflow for that, because everyone on the team would have to have the same base box or would have to be able to build it themselves. That's a lot of stuff. Just to resolve an issue with package dates. What an annoying little roadblock. So, wait. This box has already been created. Let's verify the hypothesis. And simply... No, it's not created yet. Okay, yeah, because I've broken the build. Let's remove this again. Yeah, I should have just that it's pre-create command, so the command is run or the VM gets created. Let's run test kitchen converge one more time, just to get the test instance VM. Then I'm going to log in myself, do the apt-get update, and then we'll see if the rest of the converge run actually runs successfully. just noticed the back music has almost disappeared. Looks like I need to retune this. Okay, so let's log into this machine now. Hey, Thomas XD. I did create this VM with a single, in this case it's test kitchen converge. TK is just a shell alias that I'm using here. And it creates a test kitchen instance, and test kitchen in turn uses Vagrant to spin up VM. So I should run sudo apt-get update here. And now another test kitchen convert run, which doesn't create the VM, it reuses the existing VM. Should run successfully if my assumption is correct. It's time to switch on the light. The tooling around Chef, especially with regard to development and testing, is very mature, so spinning up these test instances is as easy as it can be. My curry is that the VM base image that I'm using is quite up to date, because it's Ubuntu 14. But yes, so the hypothesis to be correct. As soon as apt package list has been updated, the recipe fine. So I need to find a way to either have my own working base image, or I'll need to find a way to run apt-get update even earlier than these resources tricks here get executed. Which could be possible if the apt cookbook really would allow me to do the same trick. I'll simply run the apt recipe before anything else here, and so the apt trick, if it exists, gets run earlier than these dynamic resources here. That'd be an alternative. And still our run here breaks, especially with compiling the mysql gem. And that's because... where's the actual error? Somewhere up there, I guess. Creating makefile. Error rbc fixnum undeclared. Fix use in this function. I guess my Ruby word in this VM is too old. And the mysql gem doesn't work. Or I'm missing Ruby. I guess Ruby dev or something is missing here. What's exactly installed in here? dpackage. Oh, this goes into chef gem, so That's all in opt. Chef embedded. There are Ruby things in here. I'm getting more and more into the weeds here. Maybe I should try running the same thing with 16 first, to see if it runs in general. Not deal with old legacy stuff. Could research this too. Test. Oh, chef gem. RB fix num unlayered. That's exactly my error message here. Not quite, but it's a pity because all that stuff doesn't relate to the original task of simply updating a chef cookbook. Instead, I'm struggling to get plumbing working, which is the reality of development life as well. But still, sitting here at 9:30 dealing with that stuff is a bit too tedious for my taste. And fair warning, I think I'm going to wrap things up soon. Because if not even I am inclined to deal with that crap, I suppose you as my viewers are. At the apt install part here worked without a hitch and still make it, and I'll have to find out why. This will take a bit of detective work, I guess, and I can do that off stream. So yeah, I guess I'd say I've been at it since last morning, and that's enough for today. I'm happy with what I've achieved over the day, even though I didn't get fuss live coding session. So yeah, I don't think that I'll be streaming tomorrow. If I am streaming, it'll be pretty spontaneous. You can make sure you're notified by subscribing to my Twitter account at this, by following the Twitch stream here, and my next regularly scheduled session will be on Saturday afternoon at 3:30 in the British and Irish time, at I guess 2:30 EST. It's too late for time zone conversions anyway. The countdown on my channel page will tell you everything you need to know. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a nice evening. Take care.